Hi everyone, my name is Emily Teacher, and today we'll be reading the story of Johnny Appleseed. In the late 1700s, most Americans had never tasted an apple. That's because very few apple trees grew outside of New England. A man named John Chapman did more than anyone else to change that. He enjoyed sinking his teeth into a sweet, juicy apple and wanted to share his enjoyment with others. When he traveled, it was his practice to take a bag of apple seeds with him. For 40 years, Chapman wandered through Ohio, Indiana, and western Pennsylvania. As he went along, he planted apple trees. So let's read about this real person, John Chapman, or Johnny Appleseed. Um, at the time when he was alive, apples didn't really grow outside of New England, those few states on the east coast of the US. But where he went, whenever he traveled, he would bring apple seeds with him and plant them in different states. So let's learn more about what Johnny Appleseed did. Chapman obtained the seeds from the New England cider mills after apples had been pressed for cider. Over the years, apple orchards began growing in many of the places he had visited. From time to time, he returned to them. He would prune the trees and make sure they stayed healthy. This unusual man was born in Leominster, Massachusetts. He began his travels in 1797 when he was in his early 20s. When he needed money, he knew how to get it. Just down the road, someone would give him work and pay him a dollar or two. Chapman spent most days on the road. In his hand was a stout walking stick cut from an apple tree. On his head was a tall black hat. At dusk, he looked for a place to spend the night. If there was no house with a room to offer him nearby, he was content sleeping under the stars. He had few needs, and it didn't bother him that his clothes were threadbare. So, Johnny Appleseed, this man was a very simple man. Right? When he needed money, he just went and got some work from someone down the road. He would walk on the streets with his walking stick from an apple tree. And at the end of the day, he would look for a place to stay. And if he couldn't find one, he would just sleep on the ground. John Chapman detested killing of any kind. For that reason, he refused to eat meat. So he didn't like killing, so he didn't eat meat. Once he even extinguished a campfire because mosquitoes were flying into the flames and dying. He had no fear of wild animals either. The animals, in turn, seemed to sense that he would do them no harm. In one of the many stories told about Chapman, he spent the night in the company of a friendly bear. When he returned to places he had visited, Chapman was greeted as an old friend. He loved to come back in the spring. It was wonderful to see apple trees he had planted years before full of pink and white blossoms. But his greatest pleasure was to return in the fall, when their boughs were weighed down with apples. Over the years, he became a familiar sight to the people living on the farms and in small towns of the Ohio River Valley. They gave him the apt name we know him by today, Johnny Appleseed. So the people of the Ohio River Valley, they saw John Chapman always had a bag of apple seeds, so they called him Johnny Appleseed. Thank you for reading with me today. We do have links related to each of these stories. If you want the link related to this article here, you can find it down in the description below.